We're going to call the meeting, special meeting for Akron City Council to order. I'm going to ask that the clerk read the roll.
Baylor, Connor, Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Somerville, Swirsky. Here. All members are in attendance except Baylor, Connor, Amobian, and Samples.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to actually move right into approving last meeting's minutes. Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Councilman, and we have one abstention. Council members, you can have a seat at this time for the special meeting, okay? Thank you. We also want to have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it, and one abstention. At this time, we're going to ask for a motion to go into committee as a whole. Motion for committee as a whole. Second. And we're going to also ask if you can include in that motion for Councilman Fusco to chair. Motion to go into committee as a whole with Councilman Fusco as chair. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it.
We had an abstention.
We had an abstention. We'll check it out. Okay. I think that's right. I think it's, yeah. Okay, very good. I ask council members to look at their first item that's up under new legislation. This is established, well, I'll ask the clerk to read in item number 1.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance establishing a charter review commission and approving and confirming appointments by the mayor of the membership of the commission and declaring an emergency.
I don't know if there's anyone here from the administration that would like to comment on this. This is, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Every 10 years, we're asked to review our charter pursuant to the charter. And this is appointing, I see Mark Ward, Barbara Brown, Rana Matar, Pedro Avalos, Margot Somerville, Jim Simon is vice chair, John Blickel, Matt Timbrook, and William Rich, chairperson. I assume that's what we're here for. So is there any questions or comments in reference to appointing these folks to the Charter Review Commission? Okay, very good. If there's no questions or comments at this time, I would ask if there's a request for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to read in item number 2.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance accepting various interests in real property for a certain property described below to facilitate the completion of some 91 Canton Road Market Street project and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Viviano. I see Mr. Little's here on item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Yes, these are small slivers of land sometimes, and we're paying real appraised value. So the largest one is on the northeast corner of Canton Road by Robindale, and it's owned by an LLC, and it's $15,000, but the rest of them maybe like $1,000, where we are removing sidewalk and maybe going onto their property maybe like a foot. We'll put their sidewalk back, that type of thing. So that's all we're doing here is acquiring this land.
Okay. Thank you. And of course, these are appraised value.
Yes.
Yes. Very good. Is there any questions in reference to item number 2? Any questions whatsoever? These are for the roundabout. Any questions? Very good. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 3, authorizing the mayor or his, oh, I'm sorry, the clerk will read this in.
It's okay. Offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Oriana House Incorporated for confinement, rehabilitation services, and alternative sentencing options for certain offenders convicted of violations of the Akron Municipal Code and declaring an emergency.
Yes. Is there anyone here on this item? Okay, very good. I'll ask for a motion for temporary time. Thank you. We will take temporary time on item number 3. I'll ask the clerk to read in item number 4.
Offered by Fusco, resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 arterial collector resurfacing program by resurfacing such streets with asphaltic concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Ludell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The next 3 pieces all relate to our resurfacing program. This lets us start the clock to notify the affected property owners, and that's a 45-day window that we have to advertise and let them know. So that's what this is. You're going to give us authorization to do today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ludell. Thank you for that report. As I'm sure we're anxious to get this started, one of the reasons why we're here. Questions or comments from anyone on council? I'd also like the record to reflect Mr. Mobian is present as well. Thank you. Mr. Malik?
Hey, Mr. Ludell, I know that this question may not be answerable right now, but do we have any thoughts on what the current coronavirus crisis, whether it might impact the schedule and the resurfacing this year?
I cannot answer that question as of today.
Thank you.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is pretty much like Councilman Malik's in the sense of not understanding how this is going to impact future revenue for the city. We may want to reevaluate all of our capital projects. And so my concern is if we approve, is this going to come back before us, or are we just going to go ahead with these projects without taking time to reevaluate the city's financial position?
We have one more
Mr.
piece
Ludell.
of resurfacing that will come back before you. Okay, if something comes down to that, even if the last meeting we authorization to bid, now we're notifying the property owners, we always have the authority not to perform the project. But if we don't do this today, it start that 45-day clock, and let's say everything is fine, and we start the 45-day clock in June, and then we're in the middle of July, and we still have the funds, we would not have enough time to perform this service this year. By the time October come around, we wouldn't get the miles paved as we do in this budget. But we will come before you one more time.
Thank you.
Mr. Malik?
I just want to say, in response to that obviously this is an unprecedented crisis, and, things are changing, and, determinations obviously going to have to be made by the administration on a day-to-day basis as to what revenue is and what expenditures are, and, I have full confidence that they're managing this well and will continue to manage this well. It's a very difficult situation.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Mr. Mobian?
I apologize for getting here late. I couldn't get away as quickly as I thought I would be able to. What are we talking about? Because my machine is still trying to load.
Oh, no, yes. This is item number 4. This is referencing the 2020 Phase 1 arterial collector resurfacing program. This is for asphaltic concrete. This is determining that we're going to pave certain streets. The next 3 items are relative to this, and as Mr. Ludell has reported, that what this does is begin the clock that we need to set today for 45 days so we can get out the bid and we can get these projects started.
And these are the items that we could not vote on last meeting because we didn't have a quorum.
Actually, no, Councilwoman Amobian. The ones you voted on Monday was allowing us to bid it. This is allowing us to notify the property owners who will be affected.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Very good. Further questions or comments? I would like to entertain a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 5, Ms. Biviano.
Offered by Fusco, resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 residential resurfacing program by resurfacing such streets with asphaltic concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is the residential side, right?
Yes, this is the residential streets.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments? Motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. The next item, item number 6, Ms. Biviano.
Offered by Fusco, resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 unimproved street resurfacing program by treating the surface thereof with substances designed to preserve the surface and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Luttle?
Yes, sir. It's the unimproved streets that we'll be doing, which is very small this year, but obviously unimproved is no curb and no gutter.
Right. Thank you. Questions, comments? Is there a motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Item number 7, Ms. Biviano.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract or contracts with Great Lakes Construction Company and Kenmore Construction Company Incorporated for the emergency repair of the sanitary sewers under Springfield Lake Outlet, East Avenue, and South Main Street, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Luttle?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we really wouldn't bring this in this way. Time is the essence. These 3 projects are completed. They are all 3 emergencies. I'll briefly talk about each one. Early January, Springfield Outlet, we had a sewer collapse, and the whole Springfield Outlet was dumping into our sewer. So we had to mobilize a contractor. Great Lakes was over on racks 10, 11 on Hazel. They had a bypass pump. We got them over there that day. And I believe it's Mr. McKittrick's one of his first ward meetings. He called me, wanted to know what was going on. He went out there, he saw what was going on. So that was that project, and that was about $650,000 because we had to replace about 50 foot of sewer. And so that was 30-inch sewer. That was, I think, 90-year-old sewer. The other one that happened just a few weeks ago, we had East Avenue collapse. Mr. Freeman probably is familiar with this. It was about 20 feet deep. There again, to keep houses from backing up, we had to get a pump out there that day. We got it set up. They had to dig down. They actually had to replace about 40 feet of damaged sewer. And then the last one, this project was done last year. We're just not getting billed for it. And that's down on South Main off the old Firestone Parkway. There was some manhole rehabilitation and some other sewers that had to be repaired down there. So those are the 3 projects.
Thank you, Mr. Luttle. Questions or comments? Ms. Mobian.
And the 3rd one is still up and running.
The 3rd?
The last one on South Main, that was completed.
Yes, all 3 have been done. Yes.
Oh, okay. There.
I'm sorry.
Good.
It was done last fall. The repair was done last fall.
On all 3?
No, the first one, they started early January and they finished up, probably about 3 weeks ago. And the East Avenue, they finished up just last Friday.
So we just authorizing?
Authorizing to pay them all, yes.
Oh, because the work has been done?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Further questions or comments? Motion? Okay, very good. Please add Mr. Kamer. Mr. Freeman and Mr. McKittrick, I assume? Yes. Is there a second on the motion? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Item number 8, Ms. Biviano.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract and make payment to the City of Fairlawn for concrete and asphalt pavement restoration completed by the City of Fairlawn and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Luttle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We do this every year with Fairlawn. As you know, we own the water lines out there. We go out and fix the water mains in Fairlawn. We have an agreement with them to more of a timely manner. They want to know if they can do the restoration. So I'm not sure how many water main breaks we had in Fairlawn, but they fixed them last year. This is just to reimburse Fairlawn for true cost of putting the road back, whether it's concrete or asphalt.
Very good. Ms. Semovian.
And this comes out of the JED funds?
No, I believe this would come out of water capital.
What's the difference? Why?
Well, I mean, we bill them for their water, so part of their bill would go into the repairs of their water main and restoration.
But the only reason we would have done the work is because we have the JED, right? For them.
Not necessarily. I mean, if we own water mains in other jurisdictions, if we own them, part of our agreement may be that we have to maintain them. Now, like Stowe, they own their own water. We have a master meter there. We deliver them water, and we only pay once it goes through that master meter. Talmadge is the same way. Even though they're JEDs, we have different agreements with different municipalities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Luttle, comparison to what they're charging us to if we had done it ourselves?
They think that we don't pay them enough. They want us to increase this. We're going off of rates, they say it's from 2014. We're going off if we did it ourselves. So we're in a, right now they'd like to reopen that negotiation, but we are paying like if we did it ourselves.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Malik?
Mr. Luttle, if I'm right, the amount here is $25,000. That seems pretty small. They're fairly minor repairs or fairly few.
I mean, traditionally, if it's a water main break, and let's say they have to take out a piece of curb, sometimes the hole's the 6 by 6. Sure. You know what I mean? So water mains aren't as deep as sewer mains. So traditionally, they're only 5 feet deep, 6 feet deep. And if it's just a spot repair, yes, it could be, it could be a $800 restoration.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the questions or comments. Can I hear a motion?
Motion for suspension of the rules for favorable report.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item number 9, Ms. Viviano.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance ratifying the actions of the Director of Public Service in contracting with H.M. Miller Construction Company Incorporated for the emergency repair of a water main on Firestone Parkway, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency.
Yes, Mr. Leto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Between Christmas and New Year's, we had a water main break, 20-inch water main break down on Firestone Parkway. H.M. Miller was doing another project for us. We asked them to go over and fix it. I think in light of what's going on right now, they got this bill into us just last week and says, can we get paid for this? So the work's been done for 6 months or 5 months, and we're going to reimburse them for their cost.
That's fair. Questions or comments? Entertain a motion? Is there a second? For suspension of the rules with a favorable report, correct? All those in favor, thank you, Ms. Amovian. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, the ayes have it. Item number 10, Ms. Viviano.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance amending, supplementing Akron Codified Ordinances 35.01, 35.03, 35.14, 35.15, and 35.16, providing for temporary adjustments to the City of Akron leave policies and allowing for flexible leave usage for the duration of the city declared state of emergency related to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and declaring an emergency.
Yes.
Yes, so this is being presented for amendment to our current ordinances that have some restrictions on the ability of employees who have been separated from the workplace due to the current state of affairs regarding the COVID-19 crisis, and the ability for them to utilize their time that they have on the books in a more flexible manner. So because we're trying to lift some of those restrictions in these type of situations. So ultimately, their ability to utilize frozen sick time without having to exhaust all their current time on the books, which is what one of the restrictions are in here. That's one of the primary things that we want to alleviate, so we can be as accommodating as we can in the use of time.
Okay. Questions? Ms. Amovian and then Mr. Malik.
I'm not sure. Do we have to stand up today, or we're not standing? Oh, good.
It's okay. Thank you. It's all right. Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Help me understand this. I recognize that we are in uncharted waters like everybody else. We are defining essential versus non-essential staff. And those that are non-essential, it sounds like we're going to pay them, thank God, regardless. Do they have to use vacation or PTO or whatever? I can understand, and I don't know how much it's going to cost based on the staff that we're talking about. Are there other ways we can cover this without people exhausting the time that they would normally use for pleasure and those kinds of things?
Well, we are looking, first of all, there are a lot of things going on right now in the federal government. Right. That is one of the things that the First Families right. Corona Act that just came down, there are going to be certain abilities for us to allow for credits for employees for usage of time, and that will cover them as well. We are doing everything we can to try to make this as smooth as possible for employees. We're giving them all the options, and that's why we want to be as flexible as we can in all the type of time of leave that they have available, that they normally wouldn't use just for this purpose. We're allowing them to use any type of leave. So we're working, with the employees very closely. Our HR department is really mobilized, and we are sending out information as things are updated the best we can so that they're aware, constantly updated as to what's going on.
Can the HR or somebody provide for us what we're talking about in terms of the weekly payroll amount for the non-essential staff? Because I do understand what you're saying, and I know this Family First Act, they're talking about 15 days after something that it kicks in. My only concern is recognizing that these are people that we are asking to stay home or whatever, and if they don't have time, it sounds like we're trying to allow them to borrow time that they don't have.
That's correct.
And do something. And I appreciate all of that because I know people need to get paid, and I think that's the bottom line. But as we look at this and figure out things, if we could find a way to reinstate the vacation or PTO, whatever, because, if they come back or when they come back, because I know we don't even know any of that now, they won't even have time to take off.
Yeah, we are, again, these are all factors that, and I agree, we're absolutely considering how we can do this in the best way possible. One of the things that we're saying is if they borrow time, for instance, while that is still time that they're borrowing, how we expect the payment to be returned, we're going to work out a system so that we can do it in a manner that's not going to be too harmful for the employee. We are trying to be as innovative, as creative as possible to try to come up with ways to help the employee transition back. Right now we are in full-blown crisis mode in terms of
Sure.
making sure right now, how do we get them away from here, from the workplace, because of all the orders out there from the health districts and
Sure.
from the governor. We're trying to take all the steps necessary to first take this one day at a time. But
Sure.
absolutely all those things are being considered right now.
I appreciate that. One more question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If, I don't know what the county is doing, but the kind of message that they sent out was different. So it would be nice if someone could figure out what they're doing versus what we're doing.
Yeah.
I know we can't do everything they're doing, but I'd just like to know what they're doing.
We have to look at the needs of our departments.
Sure.
We're different entities, even though we're all, working in the same area, and we are keeping in touch with county officials all along through this process. We're going to try to help each other out in terms of what the best practices are, but we have to look at the needs of each of our
Sure.
of our budgets and our divisions separately.
Right.
So,
Well, anyway, thank you very much for doing what you're doing, because I realize everybody's trying to make sure people have a paycheck, which is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik.
Thank you. I think the discussion covered my questions.
Oh, okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. Thank you. Now, just to be clear, reading this over, this is only going to be in effect during the emergency. That's
yes,
okay.
During-
Exactly right. Yeah.
during the state of emergency.
Second. Yes. Okay. And we also have been in discussions, and I know that during these times that the labor agreements are, different, if you will, and it allows flexibility, but I assume that we've been in communication with the labor organizations as well.
We are keeping in full communication with union officials on a regular daily basis, actually.
Absolutely. I'm sure of it, yeah. Matter of fact, I've seen some here in City Hall the last few days. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do the employees have, under this present agreement, do the employees have the opportunity to choose if they want to take vacation time versus accumulated sick leave?
Yes, they do. They are given some, we're giving this, and this is one of the things we're trying to do here by amending this ordinance also, is allowing them to be able to pick the order in which they need to utilize their time. So they can decide, do I want to take sick first? Do I want to take vacation first? This is what this is going to allow us to do, remove any restrictions from us to allow them to do that.
Because, Mr. Chair, this connects to my question about understanding the impact of, or at least projecting out the impact of some of the capital projects or whatever it is that we do, and looking at the funding source. I mean, of course, talking to other communities, we look in our own community what the county's doing. They're paying people that are being laid off. Talk to colleagues in Cleveland and Columbus. They're doing the same. Right now, they're not asking them to take time. They're looking forward to possibly the government helping out in that way. If there's something, and I know you said that the administration is looking at all avenues, I would hope that at one time the administration and council would come together to understand holistically how we can communicate better with our constituents to this matter, since we don't really have a unified way for that. But this is my point. If we can delay a capital project or two, that would make it possible for us to cover our employees so that they would not have to go into their vacation or sick time. I'd like for us to see if something like that can be done. I mean, many times we see where capital projects are delayed or carried over year and year. They're in our budget, but we don't expense that. So that goes back to Councilwoman Amobia's point, understanding what the cost could be. Because I don't know about other council people. I've heard from some of those that are going to be laid off and have already been laid off. And when we talk about this whole equity piece, there's a saying, last hired, first fired. And it usually disproportionately impacts those who can least afford. We call them, I don't even like the term non-essential. I'd like for us to change that when we have an opportunity. But we call them part-time, but for a lot of these folks, this is their full-time occupation, even though it's part-time. And so I'd just like to see if there's something we can do where we don't put the burden on those who can least afford it. And I understand the creative piece here, but we're still asking them to use their sick. It's not like we're still asking them to use their sick time, their vacation time, and what happens after they expense that. So hopefully there will be a time where we can look deeper into this, understand what the cost is to the city, so that if at all possible, we can relieve the burden on them. And this goes back to when we've had the discussions about our retirees. I remember when I first got on council, they forwent raises, they forwent pay increases to protect their health insurance. And we know things changed, and it put them in dire economic straits. So knowing that, I'd like to see if we can really get these numbers and see if there's something that we can do by delaying a project or two that will be able to take care of these employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swirsky. Oh, Mr. Swirsky first. Use the microphone, please. Use the microphone, please. You have to get on the record.
The county, the county today announced something that might be helpful, rotating the weeks for people reporting in and taking a week off. So that's just another option to consider.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we are, again, we are really taking a lot of careful consideration in every step we've taken in this matter. So I want to make that very clear. We have been really looking at what the best steps are for the city in this manner. And one of the things about rotating employees, some of the information out there, that may be an option. And employees know that who have been sent home that they may be called in as needed for certain things that have to be accomplished. or maybe coming back and their status change. However, just rotating, one of the things that the health districts are telling us is that may be a concern because we're taking people home and then bringing them back in and they're going back home, and so we're recontaminating, and some of those concerns are coming up. But again, those are things we also were thinking about. So we will continue to, this is a fluid and a process where we are every day updating what the best practices are, and we are considering every way we can to help these employees.
Thank you. And I just want us to be clear in terms of the capital budget versus the operating budget and the difference between the two. Oftentimes, in terms of capital, that's a money stack from other sources beyond just income tax and general obligation, et cetera. So that is going to certainly be impacted without question by other entities beyond our control. So, but reference item number 10, I did hear a motion from Mr. Freeman for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Correct, Mr. Freeman? Yes. And there's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. 11. Viviano.
Offered by President Somerville and Councilman Fusco, resolution urging the Ohio General Assembly to take immediate action to affirm that during a declared state of emergency in which public gatherings are restricted to maintain public health or safety, live streaming public meetings and permitting public bodies to attend meetings and conduct business by means of teleconference or video conference satisfies the requirements of the Open Meetings Act and declaring an emergency.
Do you want this to be? Yes. President Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this resolution is just basically asking the General Assembly to allow us as council members to continue to do our job, but allow us to do our job in a safe way, to do that in the privacy and safety of our own homes, using technology, online meetings such as Zoom.
It's important to clarify, too, for all members here that if I understand correctly, and I know we have representatives from the law department in case I misstep, but the only time that we could utilize Zoom is during that we'd be discussing legislation that is not routine, that's relative to an emergency situation as we currently have. And what this would do, if the General Assembly, who I understand is going to be convening on next Tuesday, if they would open the path so that we can continue the business of the city in that network, if you will, from the safety of our home that President Somerville had mentioned. So that's what we're doing here. We're asking the General Assembly to let us continue to do the business of the city. Okay. Absolutely, Mr. Freeman. All those in favor for suspension of the rules with council as a whole, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. The ayes have it. Suspension of the rules. Item number 12, Ms. Viviano.
Offered by President Somerville and Councilman Fusco, resolution declaring that the Council of the City of Akron shall be in recess until further action of Council, suspending all regularly scheduled meetings, suspending certain rules of procedure to enable the Council to continue to conduct business during this time of national, state, and local emergency in accordance with applicable law and declaring an emergency.
President Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this resolution, in our rules, it states that council should meet every Monday at 7 o'clock. In light of the pandemic and what's happening now, we don't know what's going to happen in the days and weeks to come. So we're asking that council pass this resolution saying that we don't necessarily meet every Monday, but if in fact there's an emergency that arises, we will call a special meeting to handle the business of the city.
I'm sorry. I don't think so. Questions or comments, Mr. Malik?
Yes, thank you very much. I think the first, second, and third thing that we're all focused on right now is safety. I'd like to express appreciation to council staff who have prepared this meeting for us and have gone through a lot of trouble. I know this is a difficult time. I think that the only thing I wanted to express is that if we get changes from the General Assembly, and if it's possible to do so in a safe environment, it would be nice to try to meet weekly via Zoom if possible, but I understand if that's not possible. And then I guess I also had just a further question, but if we pass this, I don't know, we might be we might be recessed. Is it appropriate to ask that question after we pass this resolution or before?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Are we in recess?
Does this resolution end the meeting?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions, Mr. Neal, and then Ms. Amobian. Ms. Movian?
I guess it seems to me that the first resolution was to allow us to conduct our meetings from a different medium. And this one is saying that we can suspend our meetings and not have them, or what are we saying in this one? Help me understand.
Ms. Nish?
So Councilman Fusco gave you guys a good overview, but essentially where we are right now is the Open Meetings Act says council has to meet in person and you have to let the public be here. So the Attorney General provided some guidance, but it's very unclear, saying that essentially you might be able to do emergency business related to the pandemic via Zoom, but you can't do your regular business like pass your budget and those sorts of things through Zoom. So next week, hopefully the General Assembly, that's what you're asking the General Assembly to do, will say you can do all the business that you need to do during the pandemic via Zoom. But until that time, you guys still have in-person regularly scheduled meetings that are on the calendar. So we need to essentially cancel, suspend those meetings, and then you guys can call Zoom meetings weekly or as you guys see fit if the General Assembly takes that step. Or even if they don't, there's guidance that says you could do an emergency action through Zoom right now, but you can't do that regular business. Does that
So
make
we
sense?
may or may not be meeting Monday?
Yeah, if I could, during discussions that we had, we're concerned due to the fact that this, the pandemic is so rapid and is moving so quickly. That's why we chose to have a meeting today. And then hopefully get everything in position so that we can operate via Zoom. Moving forward, that's the reason why we were meeting today. On Monday, I would submit that we're not going to meet on Monday until we get that clear pathway, and that's what we're shooting for, is to get that pathway so we could do regular business as well as emergency situations as they arise.
So the General Assembly meets on Tuesday?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to address this or not. I have a feeling their plate's going to be quite full, but hoping next week.
So
yes, Ms. Landers?
Thank you. Our understanding from conversations with the governor's office is that this is on Governor DeWine's short list of things to take to the General Assembly, so we are hopeful that they will move on it, but again, you know, that's just our current expectation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this is kind of, I should have asked this on number 11, but they're connected. In light of you know, our meetings are open to the public and whatnot, but we're going to be doing a lot of things electronically. And I remember we had the discussion about Cincinnati and them discussing business through emails. How are we going to give the public access to the communication that takes place between us using, be it Zoom, and this is even a question with emails, period. Like if we ever email council as a whole, what is the standard? I mean, should we always include, it's my opinion that maybe we create some form of email link that is a part of that the public can always view whatever our conversations are within the email chain. I don't know how that works, but that's my question with this. Since we're looking at moving towards potentially meeting online with Zoom, is there going to be a portal that the public can always view everything real time? And then with the emails that transpire between all of us.
Thank you. Yeah, good question. President Somerville?
I just wanted to address Councilman Neal's question in terms of public access. So with Zoom, with the help of IT and Kevin from helping us out to make this thing happen, as we're meeting on Zoom, we're automatically going to be live streaming on YouTube.
Okay.
And we also have, if I could, Mr. Neal, we're going to provide access, just as we had, I believe, the last meeting on Monday. Public comments at akronohio.gov is going to be the email address that we're going to be pushing out there for comments that may be made.
I appreciate
and I understand that that's why a lot of the other cities, I know Mr. Swirsky's been doing some research on other cities out there, and that's why they've been communicating too.
No, I appreciate that, but if everyone remembers the specific case with Cincinnati is where they were communicating through email, dealing with legislation, and we had touched on that piece. So my just question is, if we're going to be doing a lot of virtual communication, are we going to have a way for, because we had talked about this even when we first looked at on-base and compared it to other legislation. There was supposed to be 3 levels of following legislation, one for the legislative branch, one for council to where we can make our comments on it, and another one where the public could follow the legislation from, you know, origin all the way through completion. So that's just my question. Just wondering how are we going to provide the public access to follow our communication?
Thank you. Mr. Malik?
Yes, I just want to, I know we had this discussion earlier. I think the Cincinnati case is a little bit different because it involved several council members who were privately discussing city legislation on their private cell phones and text threads. I think with regard to, you know, common emails that go to all council members, I think that is a gray area where, you know, I think, you know, we have had discussions with the law department and can continue to have discussions with the law department because it is a concern when there is business that's being discussed between all council members and the public can't see that. In some cases, we have to be concerned about whether we send those emails at all. And I'm sure we'll have those discussions at a further date. And obviously, this is raising unique concerns as we go forward. And thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I'd also draw council's attention toward the uniform city council report that's submitted with every piece of legislation. Within that is the originator, there's dates on here, there's the purpose of the legislation, the impact and objective, and the thought behind why the administration would be pushing something forward, as well as a council member that may be submitting legislation. So there is a bit, I understand where you're going, Mr. Neal, but the uniform council report gives that kind of snapshot, that history of how it got to the floor of City Council. Ms. Mobian.
I just simply want to say that once this emergency thing is declared and we are declared to operate in a different way, some of those things are relaxed. However,
Thank you.
You're allowed to operate and do business in a different way, and it becomes legitimate. Like at my agency, we do face-to-face counseling. The governor is allowing us to do telephonic counseling and reimburse us for it. So it just gives you the authority to conduct business, but in a different medium, and it's all of us as opposed to a few of us. And hopefully there will be a way for the world to see whatever they need to see, the legislation, the conversations, and those kinds of things.
No,
So it's
stepping
just,
outside. These are.
I don't understand how any of
could-
it works, but I know that I'm going to be participating in a lot of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I want us to stay in bounds here, because actually this legislation only speaks to us not having a Monday meeting every Monday. This is amending our rules, if I understand this correctly, from the law department. This is changing our rules so that we don't have to meet every Monday. And that's all this is. So let's stick to just those comments only, and let's stay in bounds. So any other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Moby.
It would still allow you to call a special meeting any other day.
Absolutely.
So you continue to do business, but do it in a different way.
And all we're doing is, like I said, we're stepping outside. We're saying that we're not going to meet every Monday if not needed. So that's what this is. Any further questions or comments? With that, is there, Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, just in talking to a few other cities and doing a little bit of research, there's a difference. There's a variety of different options that cities are taking and paths that they're taking at this point. I think that this legislation gives us some flexibility in a time of urgency that will enable us to keep meeting when we need to and when we can actually produce some results for the residents. So I'd like to see us put this into a vote for approval as an emergency basis.
Very good. All those in favor, there's a second. All those with a favorable report, all those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against. Thank you. Very good. Now I'm going to ask that we cast our eyes toward item number 3, in which we had taken temporary time. I'm not certain, I believe Ms. Nish is here. Could you please read this into the record one more time so that we're all on the same page? This is item number 3 under the new list of legislation.
Offered by Fusco, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Oriana House Incorporated for confinement, rehabilitation services, and alternative sentencing options for certain offenders convicted of violations of the Akron Municipal Code and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an annual contract. As you all know, we bring this to you every year. The contract will be expiring, so that is why we are bringing it to you now, so that we can continue this relationship and these services in the community. It's a $2.7 million contract, which is a $300,000 reduction from the previous contract you approved last year. Oriana House provides a alternative sentencing center, halfway house services, day reporting, case management, and treatment specialists through this contract, and I will do my best to answer any other questions you may have. And we will also be emailing you. I believe the clerks received some information. We'll be forwarding that to all of council as well.
Thank you. Mr. Malik?
I understand if this question is not immediately answerable, but the agreement is here. Are there any substantive changes from the previous year's agreement?
I believe the one that I'm aware of is the change in the overall price. I don't believe there's any significant change to the services or the level of service, but I can absolutely have that verified by the law department.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Questions or comments? Ms. Mobian?
So you're saying the $300,000 reduction is due to pricing and not services?
I think there are some sharing between other communities who also utilize. So I can get more details on where that comes from, but I do believe that the services are the same, but we've negotiated a different pricing model given all the communities that are under contract with Oriana.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Is there a motion for suspension of the rules with favorable report? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Now I'm going to ask council, while we're in this committee as a whole, to go to the regular list of legislation under the budget and finance, which would be item number 3. This is the operating budget for the city of Akron. Mr. Fricker?
I just want to confirm that there should be two pieces. So there's the
Item number
budget
1.
resolution, and then there's the appropriation ordinance.
Very good. Item number 1 and 2, correct?
Right, correct.
Thank you very much. Under budget and finance? Oh, for this one. So we have to have, does Margo do that or what?
At this time, to address those pieces, there would need to be a vote to take those 2 pieces out of the Budget and Finance Committee and into the committee of the whole. So if someone would make a motion to that effect.
A motion to move,
Those 2 pieces in Budget and Finance into the committee of the whole.
a motion?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to move the 2 budget pieces into committee as a whole so that they can be addressed on today.
There's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it. Very good. We'll now move into the item number 1 under the budget and finance. If you could read that in, please.
Sure. Resolution adopting an annual operating budget for the fiscal year 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Fricker?
So this piece goes in concert with the appropriation ordinance that has the amounts that we are appropriating by each fund, organization, combination. So the resolution declares that what we appropriate in the second piece constitutes our annual operating budget.
Questions or comments? Mr. Malik?
I know a lot of our discussion here today is centered around, the coronavirus, and I'm sure I don't envy having had to put this whole document together and now having a sort of a shaken up sketch. Can you just speak to, how you've thought about this over the last week or two and how it might impact the budget?
So basically, the budget is being presented as per what we formulated prior to the coronavirus. So this is not inclusive of the adjustments that will be made as a result of the coronavirus. So obviously, we will have changes in our labor force charges, changes in our contractual charges. We will have adjustments to the revenues that we receive in 2020. to determine what those are at this time really is not possible. So we are proceeding with this amount. We will monitor our revenues coming in, and we will monitor our expenses as they occur, and we'll be coming back to council throughout the course of the year to adjust those amounts as appropriate.
And is, including operating and capital, a lot of times before things occur, as we all are very much aware, I think Mr. Fricker somewhat mentioned it, a lot of times before things occur, legislation comes in. So I'm assuming that, especially
Correct.
on the capital side, but also on the operating side, I assume that, you know, whenever legislation comes in, we're going to be looking at it closely. And a lot of things that were planned, I'm assuming, is not going
Correct.
to
I mean, that's
going
going to be a
forward.
big, so, you know, for the past week, we've been focused on the operation of our city. So within finance, we've been focusing on how can we keep tax revenues coming in? How can we keep our utility billing office operating? How can we continue to do our bank reconciliation in our treasurer's division? So as we move forward, the focus is going to shift to what are the appropriate expenses that we'll be incurring in 2020, given, you know, what's occurring, and, you know, many of the services that are normally provided will either be not provided or be adjusted in some way.
And, Mr. Fricker, I would personally ask, and we have all of council, to please, I know we get the quarterly reports, but during these trying times, these most difficult of times that we're experiencing, you know, at least in our generation, if you could provide us with monthly reports. I know before, typically it's on a quarterly basis, but I would request that on the income side, especially, that we receive that on a monthly basis so we can be
I think
apprised.
on the income side, in terms of the tax revenues, we do provide that monthly.
On monthly.
The
I-
quarterly financial report is kind of a hybrid of both revenue and expense. That is provided quarterly. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Further questions or comments on this item? Mr. Neal.
I know we'll be able to get into more depth on ordinance number 2. There were a lot of questions that we had asked during the budget period. I didn't see them on my...
So we did provide updates every day with the questions that were asked. We distributed documents through email that addressed all the questions that were asked.
Well, I'll ask you next. I'll ask it in the next section, because my concern as we go into this budget is that as council as a whole, we really have not had an opportunity to discuss what our goals and objectives are, and I'm sure that what we have listed as goals and objectives for city council are not reflective of what we hope to, how we hope to serve our constituents throughout the year. One of my questions was, and if you could tell me what day it was sent out, I don't know if you know, we had looked at ways we can find resources for city council, and one was in the amount of that we write off every year under the water department. In the past, I think it was anywhere right around 1.2, and we usually got back around 800. I'm just trying to understand if that's still the case, and what's coming back to the city and how those funds are utilized.
I don't have the delinquency numbers, you know, right now, but in terms of are you talking about what is certified to the county, which we
Yes.
collect through the county property taxes?
Yes.
So that goes, you know, up and down with, depending on how those collections come in and who pays those on their property tax bill.
Well, I remember when we were looking at it in the past, that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 800,000 that was coming back every year. We were writing off right around somewhere around 1.2, 1.5 every year, and getting back about 800. But I'll ask that on the next.
Okay, very good. Further questions or comments? Mr. Mallett.
I just wanted to point out, I checked, there was an email that was sent from Ms. Donnell on Monday that included a PDF with answers to those questions. I don't know, but it's there.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? I'd like to entertain a motion for suspension of the rules of the favorable report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The ayes have it. Item number 2, Ms. Viviano.
Ordinance to make the annual appropriation for the current expenses, other expenditures, and the capital outlays of the City of Akron for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
Questions or comments? Mr. Neal.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, my concern is what we have listed for council.
I understand, Mr. Neal. I, too, had some concerns reference the budget, but given, the events of the last 2 weeks, we've been focused on obviously moving City Council and the city forward. We're going to need to revisit, I'm sure, and anything at this point would just be pure conjecture in terms of, where we're going to be in 2 weeks, 2 days, in 2 years, what have you. So I just, I think it's moving
with all
forward.
due respect, Mr. Chairman, you can go back over the last 10 years that I've been on council, and please pull up the goals and objectives for council. We don't have any. I know we can do better than our goal and objective for 2020 for City Council being to get new chairs for these council chambers. We haven't had a chance to discuss the City Council grant, how effective it was last time, how much we're going to put it in this time. For education and travel, we used to have a budget of $40,000. It's cut down to $15,000 now. We don't have any kind of community engagement. Something that really hit me with what we're doing right now. This council passed in 2014 to create a neighborhood mobile resource center that would be very effective in something like this, allowing us to work with the county, the school system, and other places and go in. Never been funded. We passed to put our budget online, never been funded. What are the goals and objectives of council, and how are we going to fund them? Because you cannot say that we need to pass this budget and then we're going to go back. Because once you pass a budget, it means you have to take money from something else.
Exactly.
This is the
That's
time.
how this works.
This is the time, just like every department has provided us with goals and objectives and how they want to fund them, this is the time for council to do that. And I just think with all the needs that are out there in our community, we should have something more than new chairs for council chambers. One of the things, even with this new COVID, and we had talked about this once before, is creating a better platform to engage our citizens and get information out to them. And so, because one of the simple things is in using something old school is even understanding what is our individual budget for communication, to send communication out to our residents. I don't feel comfortable with us not having any kind of budget like that for council.
Okay, well, I'm going to take comments one at a time as I recognize them. Mr. Malik, then Ms. Somerville, then Mr. Swirsky.
I just want to say, I know we had this discussion last week, and goals and objectives are something that have to be shared, right? They're not any single member's goals, right? That's what collective action is. And, 5 of us around this table are new. Well, we kind of just got here. And we've had one retreat. I know we're hoping to have more. If it was up to me, we would have a retreat every weekend. I know that's not feasible right now, but I look forward to working with all of you to develop taking each of our goals and objectives that I know we all have right now and putting together a comprehensive framework for how that'll work. It's simply not something that fits in the timeline of the city budget in March, 2 months into our council term, right, with all of us creating that. It's not something that can be fit into a week. And so I think it's something that we have to hold our feet to the fire and continue to do. And I look forward to doing that as we have the time and the space to do it.
Thank you, President Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just also want to just make very clear that council as a body has been trying to organize a retreat for some time. We've actually put out a couple of dates, but have had a difficulty of having all council members be able to meet that date so that we can make that happen, because when we do have a retreat, we want to talk about the grant program and reevaluate that. We want to talk about some collective goals that council collectively can work on. We want to go back and look at some of the rule changes and evaluate some of those things. So again, we just have not had the opportunity to identify a date in which majority of council members can be there, but that is our intention, and we will make that happen.
Yes, Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, just since we are in a state of emergency through the mayor, from the governor, I think legitimate concerns that some have raised here could easily be answered, though, through the amendment process. So we can amend this, we can change it. Nothing is being locked away or locked in, but let's move it forward today.
Thank you. Ms. Mobian?
You know what I do want to say, and I don't know if this comment should have come before this particular ordinance, is that reviewing and developing the budget, if it's not the most important job we have, it's really at the top of the list. It should never be done at a time when we know that people are not going to be in town. And I'm not really sure, and this is prior to the pandemic that we're in. We're in an emergency situation now, but the scheduling of the budget review and the hearings from the department should never be scheduled that way. Should never. Hopefully it won't happen again. I've been on this council 10 years now. I don't ever recall us intentionally doing that. And especially when you know that the members are going to be away months in advance, and then this is done. Secondly, I recognize that we are in uncharted territory today, and that I have spent a lot of time with a lot of employees from the city, and I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate, Mr. Fricker and Mr. Segedy and Ms. Tomic. A number of people have called me back, and we've discussed some of these issues in the budget. Because when I attended the mayor's State of the City address, I was quite impressed with the robust vision that he has for the city, because it encompassed a number of things that many of us have talked about, is how do we grow the city at the same time, address the needs of the citizens that are currently living here who are really struggling to stay in Akron. And it appeared to me that his vision included that. So I wanted to make sure that the budget reflected that. And there are a number of areas where I still have questions and concerns, but I think some of my concerns have been slightly addressed by staff, particularly in regards to rehabilitating homes and working with the citizens to make sure that they have a safe place to live and a roof over their heads. And I know that because of all what we're going through, we don't even know what the tax income is going to look like in a month or two, so that may be adjusted as well. I realize all those things. But again, I just want to make sure that a lot of the concerns and the questions, because we've been talking forever about Elevate Akron and how we're going to be an inclusive city and making sure that things are happening. I don't know how many of these non-essential employees, because unfortunately, sometimes the last hired and first laid off or fired are folks of color. So I don't know how many of those non-essential employees are going to be in that group. But what I do appreciate is what Mr. Fricker shared with me, is that everybody will receive a paycheck and will be able to borrow time that they may not have. That I appreciate. So there are a number of things that we talked about in the budget that I really wanted answers to. But again, I know that we don't have all the answers today. And I guess I am prepared to move forward, because we're going to have to do something with this budget. It has to be done by the 31st. So, but I wanted to get those comments out, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make this statement. We're having a special meeting today. The budget is the most important responsibility of council. us having a comprehensive budget for council, we can call a special meeting. We've had plenty of time. We know when this comes up every time, even when it was scheduled at an inconvenient time when some of us were out of town handling other city business. I was disappointed to come back and not see a full member of council here for budget hearings. So even for the general budget, but council, we should be able to come together and put our collective goals on how we're going to serve this city. That's our responsibility, and we have not done that. And what I'm saying is, if you go back and you look at the documented history of council and look at our goals and objectives, it does not reflect a collective vision and plan of council. And in this time, we are challenged to be able to serve our citizens. And so passing the budget without any goals for council down, they say the best indicator of what's going to happen in the future is to look at the past, and our history does not reflect that we're going to be able to address those. So, it's with regret that, we have to the end of this. This budget doesn't have to be passed until the end of the month. We still have time as a council to put together a collective plan to address the needs in our community, one of which is building a platform that, if this lasts longer, that will allow us to communicate and engage our citizens in the proper way.
Thank you. I'd like to remind council that the reason for today's meeting is we don't know what Monday is going to look like, let alone 2 weeks from now is going to look like. That's why President Somerville and myself and Mr. Swirsky leadership decided to meet this Friday, and not wait till Monday. We don't know moving forward. It's important. It's our responsibility. Yes, the budget is our responsibility, and yes, the budget is live streamed as it was last year, as it was this year. Okay, this is our responsibility. Yes, indeed it is. That's why we're meeting today. There's all kinds of uncertainty out there today. Our families, our constituents, Akron, the United States, the world, there's all kinds of uncertainty. The one thing we were certain of, though, is that in order to help the mayor do what he has to make sure we provide those essential services, we have to get this budget passed. We're uncertain about Monday. That's why we're here today. The one thing we are certain about is let's get this done today. Let's give the mayor and his staff the resources that they need to move forward. Because I'll be honest with you, next Monday, I don't know if we could possibly get together. That's why we're here today. That's why I'm asking right now for a suspension of the rules of the favorable report. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good. Thank you. Is there anything else? That was item number 1, or was that 2?
That was 2.
That was 2. Very good. Okay. Very good. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion that we step out of the committee as a whole. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it.
Before we move into our old business, Councilman Fusco?
I would like to make a motion that we reconsider the consent agenda.
Is there a motion to reconsider the consent agenda? We did place a vote in the absence of Councilwoman Linda Amobian. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Councilman Fusco?
I'd like to make a favorable report with suspension of the rules on the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. This passes 9-0 with 1 abstention.
Very good. We'll now go to our old business, budget and finance, and that is going to be Councilman Fusco.
Very good. Thank you. This is an item that we have just previously discussed. This is a resolution adopting the annual operating budget for the fiscal year 2020. We ask for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. We just had discussion on this annual operating budget for 2020. We ask it be passed tonight.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it with one abstention. Councilman Neal.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kanger,
Yes.
Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky.
Councilman Fusco?
Yes, thank you. On item number 2, we ask for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is for the annual appropriation for the current expenses, expenditures, capital outlays for the city of Akron for the fiscal year December 31st, 2020. We ask for passage.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. Do you have
Yes.
any further comments?
Yes, just that, as previously mentioned, we went through the operating budget department by department. It was live streamed. There's obviously, especially in these uncertain times, we've got to move forward and again provide the tools to the mayor and the leadership here in Akron, police, fire, EMS, to the city employees out there who are continuing to provide services. This will do that, and so we recommend approval this afternoon.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mobian?
I just want to make sure we go on the record as saying that the questions that we did not get answers to will be answered forthcoming. I know that, and I can't think her, is it Goodrich, your assistant? Mrs. Goodrich is working on a job description for the diversity person that's going to be hired. There are some questions. I did talk to Mr. Segedy about the, I think it is Grow Akron 2.0 or something, which includes the plan to address the current citizens we have. So those things, I want to go on record in saying that although we don't have answers for those things, they are forthcoming, and there will be opportunity to clarify what all of these things and impact they will have on our city moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mobian. Mr. Fricker, did you have a comment?
No.
Okay, very good. Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I am hoping to get answers. As I reached out, there was one of the things that council agreed on with the administration was the helping us understand how to implement equitably policy and equitable training. Even putting that in the budget, we don't have it in the budget. And I understand how important this is. Every other department sent us their goals and objectives. I just want to stress again, my concern is that we're about to pass a budget and we don't have any of the funding sources identified to move the goals and objectives of this collective body. And this is the time that along with the rest of the city, that we should have done that. And so one of the things that I'd like to go on record is that again, council having the opportunity to identify potential funding sources for our needs. One being the working with the police department with search and seizure funds, the credit card rebates that have come back that at one time funded the city council grant program in a tune when it was at its highest was $10,000 per ward. And then any other thing that we can look at to help us work with the administration and every other department in this city to make sure that we serve our constituents to the highest level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. Councilman Freeman?
I just wanted to thank everybody that attended the budget hearings, Mr. Fricker, for everything that he put together. And I do want to say, lots been said about our goals and objectives. We did end up last year, and council's a part of this, we did end up passing hundreds of pieces of legislation, ending up with about a 5% increase in income tax last year. And so council, we have done a few things right, I believe, and I look forward to passing this budget. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Councilman Freeman. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. And one abstention, Councilman Neal.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. This passes 9-0 with one abstention.
Planning and Economic Development, Councilman Fusco, are you taking time?
Time on the agenda.
Time will be granted. Public Service, Councilman Kamer. Time will be granted. We'll now move into new legislation. Item number 1.
Item number 1, offered by Fusco, ordinance establishing a charter review commission and approving and confirming appointments by the mayor of the membership of the commission and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
The request of the committee as a whole is for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. This is appointing members to the Charter Review Commission. Every 10 years, our charter asks that we review it in detail, and fortunately, we have people in our community willing to do this. This is going to be a lot of work, but let's move it forward and get this underway. Request suspension of the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 2, offered by Fusco, ordinance accepting various interests in real property for a certain property described below to facilitate the completion of some 91 Canton Road Market Street project and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
Request the committee for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is a appraised value for the roundabout for the right-of-way that's going to be opening up for the Canton Road Market Street project.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 3, offered by Fusco, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Oriana House Incorporated for confinement, rehabilitation services, and alternative sentencing options for certain offenders convicted of violations of the Akron Municipal Code and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
The request of the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is our annual contract with Oriana for services, and it's the actual cost is lower than last year's. We recommend approval.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 4, offered by Fusco, resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 Arterial Collector Resurfacing Program by resurfacing such streets with asphalted concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
Request of the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. This is determining it necessary to improve arterial and collector resurfacing program.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 5, offered by Fusco, resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 Residential Resurfacing Program by resurfacing such streets with asphalted concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
Request the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is Phase 1 for the residential resurfacing program for 2020.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 6, offered by Fusco. Resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 unimproved street resurfacing program by treating the surface thereof with substances designed to preserve the surface and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Request the committees for suspension of the rules with favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
This is for improving unimproved streets in our city.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 7, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service, without the formality of publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts with Great Lakes Construction Company and Kenmore Construction Company, Incorporated, for the emergency repair of the sanitary sewers under Springfield Lake Outlet, East Avenue, South Main Street, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Request the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is allocating funds for emergency repairs to the Springfield Outlet, Springfield Lake Outlet, East Avenue, and South Main Street.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky, and I apologize, Kamer, Freeman, and McKittrick were also co-sponsors of that piece.
Thank you.
Item number 8, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract and make payment to the City of Fairlawn for concrete and asphalt pavement restoration completed by the City of Fairlawn and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Request the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is pursuant to our annual agreement with the City of Fairlawn for repairs for concrete and asphalt to the expense of about $25,000.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 9, offered by Fusco. Ordinance ratifying the actions of the Director of Public Service in contracting with H.M. Miller Construction Company, Incorporated, for the emergency repair of a water main on Firestone Parkway and authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Request the committee is for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
This is for emergency repairs to a water main on Firestone Parkway.
The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 10, offered by Fusco. Ordinance amending, supplementing Akron Codified Ordinances 35.01, 35.03, 35.14, 35.15, and 35.16, providing for temporary adjustments to the City of Akron leave policies and allowing for flexible leave usage for the duration of the city-declared state of emergency related to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Request the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is this would allow the mayor and his staff to move the city forward with regards to temporary adjustments for leave policies and flexibility for usage of the leave rules that we currently have. So we recommend approval this afternoon.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 11, offered by President Somerville and Councilman Fusco. Resolution urging the Ohio General Assembly to take immediate action to affirm that during a declared state of emergency in which public gatherings are restricted to maintain public health or safety, live streaming public meetings and permitting public bodies to attend meetings and conduct business by means of teleconference or video conference satisfies the requirements of the Open Meetings Act and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Yes, suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. And this would be, I'm not sure if it's mayor and council as a whole, but council as a whole. This is asking the General Assembly to take up the possibility of cities being city councils and legislative bodies able to move forward via teleconferencing. This would open up the path because currently within the state of Ohio we're not able to do that. If it's an emergency situation, you're able to do it with regards to emergency type legislation relative to that, but in terms of moving the city forward altogether, for example, today's operating budget, that's a routine piece of legislation, hence the reason why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 12, offered by President Somerville and Councilman Fusco. Resolution declaring that the Council of the City of Akron shall be in recess until further action of Council, suspending all regularly scheduled Council meetings, suspending certain rules of procedure to enable the Council to continue to conduct business during this time of national, state, and local emergency in accordance with applicable law and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Yes, thank you. The request of committees for suspension of the rules of the favorable report.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. This is in essence amending our rules so that we can operate in this very new environment that we're experiencing. Let's hope and pray it's for the short run.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Somerville, Swirsky.
At this time, I'm going to ask if we can have a motion for adjournment. Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? If not, the ayes have it. Thank you.
This concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margot Somerville, President of Council, presiding.
Council members, we're just going to ask if you would just remain present right where you are. We are going to try to test the Zoom technology.